Hey guys, I'm going to carry on my puzzle speed run, and we've now moved on to the rating range 250 to 500, so I've put that in to chess.com puzzles custom. I've set my timer for 10 minutes so we don't all get bored and fall asleep. By the way, there's a sleeping Labrador behind me, so if you can hear snoring, it's Bentley. Okay, so yeah, someone's asked if I can add a bit more insight on the process that you go through for puzzles. So there's this kind of hierarchy of forcing moves where you go for, well, number one is checkmates, right? Checkmates is a game finisher, and if we can sharpen our senses for that, then that's the ideal. There's no point giving a check or applying pressure if you can end the game, right? Finish him. And then it goes checks, captures, and threats. Okay, checks is the most forcing because you've legally got to escape a check. You've got to get out of it on the next turn. So here, do we have checkmates? Okay, well, we start with checks and then probably see if they are checkmates. And I can see the knight can come in here and check the king, but that's not very good because the bishop just captures. But what about here? That is check, and also I see that the knight covers the f7 square as well. So that is a semi-smothered mate. Okay, let's crack on. Wow. Okay, so this looks to me like mate in 2, and the key thing is here. This is like a fool's mate, I think, isn't it? So basically, your opponent's moved the f pawn, but the other important thing is they've also moved the h pawn. That means the h pawn is not here, and it's no longer defending g6. Okay. So, checks, queen h6, check, and I know there's only one legal move. He's got to push the pawn, but this pawn is now undefended because he's moved this one. So now queen takes g6 as mate. See? Alright, next up. Knight comes in. Now, a lot of us would be very tempted just to grab the knight, but this is, I suspect that's not the solution. We have an open file here. We've got two rooks on the open file. The king is prevented from getting to the 6th rank by his own pawn on the c file. All right, by our rooks obviously on the b file, but crucially by this pawn. Okay, so the presence of this pawn here is vital, because if we now give check here, which is forcing, so what's our opponent going to do? Well, he's got to get out of check. He can't capture the rook because it's defended. So rook here, the king cannot go anywhere else on the back rank because he's still in check. So that's not even legal. Can't go here because he's still in check. So he has to come here or here. Okay, and then once he goes to either of those two squares, we've got rook b7, and he still can't go on the b file. He still can't go on the back rank. So the only square, and he can't go anywhere on the 7th. Because we've got a rook on there, the only square would be here, but that is covered by our pawn. So rook to b7 is now checkmate. Okay. Queen has jumped out into the board. Kind of half threatening f2. Interesting one. Okay. So I'm looking for checks, and I see queen takes e8. And this is a very common pattern. You can ignore everything else on the board unless there's something that can jump into this square here, right? It's checkmate. This is a back rank, but because the queen is on this square, she also guards there, right? So that is simply mate in 1. Okay, so it's a check, and there's nothing that can block it. It's simply mate in 1. Very important pattern. Everybody should know that. Okay, I notice I have a bishop looking at c2. My queen is under attack, but that's not the point of the puzzle. The point of the puzzle is, are there any checks? Well, queen here is a check. It's protected by the bishop and covers all of those squares anyway. Queens always do. So that's also going to be a mate in 1 puzzle. There we go. Okay, similar one. Queen supported by bishop. It's a check and it's supported and there's nowhere for the king to go. Simply a mate. Nothing else matters. If you can finish the game, then whatever your opponent has in mind doesn't count. Okay. Now, White is attacking my bishop, which is defended. I have a pawn ready to come in here and promote. However, if my pawn should promote, the king can snatch it straight off. So what can we do? And I can't see the solution straight away, I have to figure it out. Okay, so checks. This is a check, and that's actually a fork as well. I'm attacking the king and the knight at once. The king will probably want to take the pawn, but it doesn't really matter where the king goes because I win the knight. And if I win the knight, I should win the game. There we go, that's it. So we're up a full bishop in the ending, and that will be enough to win the game. Here we have an endgame problem. Okay, so first we'll start with taking the rook, and not because it's winning the material, but because it also comes with check. Okay, now this pawn, if it advances, I can snatch it off. This pawn, I can snatch it off. But if I give check here, the king's in check by the pawn, and he can't come here. So he's got to go sideways or backwards, right? And then I believe, because I have a pawn here, my king just comes... it depends if he comes here. Because I know that pawn here is supported by a king on this square, and that's the red carpet for the pawn that can't be stopped. Okay, so come here, king goes there, we're fine because we can come round and support the pawn, and there's nothing that black can do to win in time. Black could force a pawn through in a 3-on-2 situation, but he won't have time to do it. Okay, so the question is then, if the king comes here in front of our pawn, then I'm not quite sure what to do. Is it the right solution? We take, king comes here, and then I'm kind of in zugzwang. I don't really want to move my king. If I move my king away, he's going to take my pawn, then I come in here. This is a tricky one actually. Take that. Okay, now, I mean, it had to be the first move. Now I don't have to move away from the pawn. I can move to the side here. Then if he moves, I take him. That's the correct solution. Interesting one. So I really could not see that from the start. But that's a puzzle rating 366? Really? Okay. Right, bishop's just come down and grabbed my bishop. The question is, what do we do? Now I see I have a check with the bishop. That's a nice move. If I just grab his bishop straight away, I lose mine. Okay, and we're in a kind of equal situation. That's not the point of the puzzle. If I evade one attack with check, then on the next move my opponent has to get out of check, and then I win the bishop. Okay, so I end up a bishop up, which should be enough. Alright, let's carry on. Interesting one. This is very similar to our fool's mate idea, you see. Notice, so the first thing I'm drawn to is checks. Okay, bishop here is a check. Yes, the knight can take it, but I follow up with a queen. So, the point is that the f-pawn is away from home, but also this h-pawn has moved, and there's no g-pawn then that can block it. Okay? So in fact, whether the h-pawn was there or there doesn't really matter. The point is the g-pawn's now too far forward. So bishop here, and then queen there, and there's nothing to block. It's a checkmate. See? Okay, this looks, I mean, I immediately see a fork. Right, I'm looking for checks. I'm going straight for checks. I come in here, attacking the king. He's in check. And he can't move to save the bishop. I end up a piece up in the end game and should win. Rook here. Okay, what have we got? Well, first thing, I mean, I'm looking at takes taking this pawn, taking this pawn, but queen takes f7 is checkmate. And that's the end of the game. Solved. Okay. A nice endgame one. Well, we'll finish this one because I like the endgame. I need to drill my endgames. So we're black and we're going up the board, right? Now, I can go here or I can go here. I can't go here because of the pawn, okay? So I've got two options. I can go in front of the pawn, which is generally the right thing to do, or I can go behind the pawn, which is generally not. I think it's in front, and I'll tell you for why. If I come here, the king comes here, I can't go to there and I can't go to there, right? The king will be on this square and it'll have a force field around it, and the pawn's guarding that. So if I go there, king goes there, I've then, on my next move, got to go to one of these squares, and then he gets my pawn, okay? See that? If I come here, I'm defending the pawn, and then it's white's king who's got a problem. White's king from here, so with my king on that square, I've got this force field, so he can't go into any of those, and he can't go here because of the pawn. So it's the exact same pattern. I go here, he has to come away from his own pawn, and there we go, and we win. Lovely little example, that very, very subtle. So there you go, that's our, was it 250 to 500 speed run. They're going to get tougher. Keep watching. Thanks for watching. See you soon.